Hi everyone, I'll see you on the top of the hour. I will be continuing on with my dragonrider. Okay, see you then. Hi guys, welcome. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. I hope you've all had a good 2 weeks. I'm sorry I weren't with you last week. I was really unwell. I'm still not back to my normal self, but I'm definitely able to do this. So sorry that I missed a week. I wish there was a way that Twitch and YouTube would allow me to actually put a notification on to say why I'm not around. But I do actually put something up on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Twitter? Yeah. That's the best I can do. So, this week, I'm carrying on with my dragon riding lady. But I start out how I always start out, with an item of the week. Hi, Arty Hearty Life. Nice to see you. So I thought I'd bring out me dragon teapot. So to start out with, you've got a really nice dragon egg lid. Then
Hearty Life was really ill last week too.
I'm really sorry to hear you were ill. I've heard a lot of people have been unwell. My father-in-law is currently unwell with it. There's a whole virus thing going around. So you've got a blue and a pinky purple dragon. So let's give you a better look. They've both got teeth in their head, and I really am pleased with the teeth in the purple one particularly, because they really did come out very well. The blue one's teeth are also good, but they don't look as sharp. The purple one has a really nice flame that fades from yellow through to red, and they've both got head crests of different designs. This one's a very flat single piece with bumps at the top, whereas the blue one's got more spikes going on.
I think that's just the dragon egg is really cool.
Yeah, it's really easy to do with a teapot, because they've already got the handle. You can just push the clay on and start to shape it in place, and then I used a straw to go around to make the actual the egg scales. If you cut a straw on a diagonal, it leaves the perfect shape to do this with, and it's really effective, and it holds on really well, especially because you're curving it around at the bottom like that. So it's a real firm thing, and you haven't got to glue it then. So yeah, I'm very pleased with these guys. They're in my shop for £80. Only one available. I don't do doubles on big things like that. So let's get back on with our dragon riding lady. My main aim this week is to get the woman put in place, make the plinth for the glass ball, and if I've got time I'll do the hands, because they're the last bit. So I rolled out the black plinth already to save time. Literally condition your clay, roll it out flat, and then I just went round and pushed on the edge to make that sort of dip down effect that you've got going on there. And I put the dragon on already because of the size and bulk of it. It is very easy to get it to fall apart. So I wanted to be able to not have to worry about getting in the way of the camera, which I would have certainly have done. But carefully placed it on. Once I got it in a position I liked, I then went round very carefully, pushed everything down and secured it on. So you want the towels, the tummy, the feet, make sure the head's in place where you want, and that's where we've ended up with. So let's hold it up, and I have to say I absolutely love this dragon. I've also scored some lines on the top of the head frill because I thought that looked better, and the two on the sides have also got lines carved into them, but it's harder for me to show you because if I tip that at too weird an angle, I don't want it to start to fall. So I've got a girl back, and I re-put back in the spikes into her feet to help embed into the bottom. Now what I'm thinking is having her in the side there. So we got a hand petting the head, and then the plinth will go there. So they're both looking at the crystal ball. Yeah?
That's good to know.
Now, I reckon what we're gonna need to do is be a bit careful with this, because we are gonna need to embed the arm wire into the head, and I think it's a bit long at its current state to not mess it up completely.
Isn't it only going to embed into the hand?
Nope. The one that's not gonna be petting the dragon, I can then put the hand straight onto that wire. What I'm using the other wire for is push it into the dragon's head to help give her more structural stability, and then we'll connect a hand to the wrist and lay it just slightly off center.
So should you, instead of cutting it, just bend it down then so that it can go into the dragon?
We can, but if you bend it down too much, you've got the risk of breaking the bait clear at the wrist, and it's going to go a long way in the muzzle. So
bend the very tip so that the tip goes down.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim it a bit shorter.
Yep.
Whoop. Like that. And make sure that is bent down a bit. Then we're going to have one shot at this, because we need to first get the arm in the head and then embed the feet into place. And if you see, I've got little wires at the bottom of the feet, and there's holes in the soles of the shoes, and that's also to help anchor her.
Would it be easier to anchor? No, I don't know.
The reason why I'm doing the wire in the head is because then I can angle the feet so that she's standing in a position that's okay.
Right.
If I put the feet in, then I've got to try and bend her forward if I don't line it up perfectly for the hole in the head.
I understand.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we're going to support the head. That's the first step. And push that wire in like that.
Too deep? Does that leave you enough space for the hand?
Yes,
Sorry,
it does leave me enough space for the hand. So like this, and then I'm going to push her feet down firmly. And as you saw in previous episodes, I have baked her already, so I'm not going to smudge her all out of place by doing this, which is a must. So can you see how she's a lot more stable by having her hand embedded into the head? So I have done the hand for this side already, but if you can imagine, I'm going to show you how to do the other hand. We can join that wrist on and bring it across so that it looks right. Trust me, it will work. Now let's do this pillar as the next bit. So I'm just putting my wire cutters out of the way, and that bit of wire that I cut off, I'm not going to throw it away. I've got a little box that I saved them into. Now I wanted to make sure this pillar stays strong and it's easy to keep it straight, so I've got some, I think it's 18 gauge florist wire, 3 bits of it cut to the same length and wrapped it in masking tape. Now how I got the length was, before I put her feet spikes in, I stood her roughly in place, and then I got a bit of baking paper and I folded it until it was at a height that I liked. So I used that as the measure underneath her arm. You can use a ruler, but where they're rigid it's harder to get it into place. So once you've got a bit of paper the right kind of length, you can then use that to measure up your wire. Does that make sense? Right, so that's going to be the core of our pillar. What I've also got is Fimo FX granite clay, and what they've done, if you can see, they've got grey clay mixed in with it a very small amount of silver glitter, but a lot more of this black matte glitter. So it looks,
yeah, that's more like it.
Kind of granitish.
It does look very granitish.
So that's what we're going to
You
use.
want to show people your model using this camera from side on?
Okay, apparently I can show you a side on using another camera. So let's do a...
Here we go, can you see?
Can we see? There we go. So we got the dragon like this and the wing spike, and you can see how the hand's embedded into the head, and she's stood at a reasonable angle. I might even put her slightly more upright, but she's very, very firmly in place. So let's do a quick spin so you get to see the other side. That's her back, and you can see the ridges on the head frill. Claws, outer wing. I love that flower design that I ended up with for the wing. Quick spin, round like that, tail and foot. So what I did to measure up for that bit of paper was, there we go, I literally,
can you put it more central in the camera, please?
there we go, I held the bit of paper under her hand to make sure that it was the height that I wanted. So I'm just going to pass this camera back. We go back to my overhead shot. I may use, well, I will use it in the future. This is, I didn't even know he had this. My husband's a computer whiz. I don't know how any of you guys get on without a Jamie, because I certainly couldn't. So I've already conditioned this clay, which means you're rolling it out into a stick and bringing it back together without trapping air bubbles to mix in the plasticizer in the clay. And I've cut a chunk off of my clay, and I'm going to push my stick into the middle of it like that. Then when we roll it, it will go up the stick, if that makes sense. I'm going to put her slightly to one side, so I've got a bit of desk room to actually work on making stuff. Let's move that hand out of the way. There ain't no point you seeing the model all the way through and not me actually doing the tutorial. Right, make sure you don't trap any air on the inside of this. So, but you want to make it a uniform thickness. So like that, that's a good start. Now, what I'm going to do is cut the top and bottom off. Now I got it to the thickness that I want, and it is thinner than the end of the post that the end result that I'm aiming for, and that's on purpose because I'm going to do an embellishment in a minute. Right, let's take off top and bottom like that. So that's a good core pillar, and I have got a little bit sticking out the bottom, and that's absolutely fine. So what I've got is the Fimo extruder that my husband bought me for my birthday, and I've got the flower shaped disc with some more of this granite clay in it. Now what I've found with these extruders, you've got to go slow or you're going to get lines like crack lines along the actual clay itself as it comes out. Oops, I'm going backwards, that's not good. Go forwards.
Sorry, didn't mean to focus the camera.
So there we go. It's hard to get it directly under the camera, but you can see it's starting to come out now. And they do sell cheaper ones, and I did have one where you've got to push it like you would with a syringe.
It's easier to be directly under
And
it and go lower.
it is an awful thing to use. It really hurts your hands. It's better to stump up the money and buy a decent one with a ratcheted handle like this.
When I do it at
Oops.
table level,
What, like that?
Says, want to become no, that's a bot.
Is it a bot?
Yeah.
The joys and joys of bots.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start to turn this upside down so that it doesn't fold over like that. But I was just wanting to show you it coming out as much as I could.
Why not do it just sideways? Or do you need
Because I don't want to hit the glass table with the handle as I turn it.
Oh, okay.
And gravity helps. Right, now what I'm going to do is put these sticks all up the sides of that pillar that I just made. So that's why I'm going for quite a bit. It's just going to take a while. Luckily this clay is quite moist. The drier the clay, the harder it is to extrude it. So you might want to consider putting in some clay softener. Let's see if that's enough. I've got enough in it to do some more if I need to. So I'll put that to one side. So what I'm going to do, can you see you got that 3 sticks together shape? So I'm going to start pushing it so that there are two, the biggest, so it's like a triangle but with the points coming out to the side, so the 2 bumps are towards the stick.
Almost like a 3-legged clover.
And the top one is sticking out, so like that. And I'm going to go around and do that all the way around, so it just has a more ornate effect.
Are you going to do 4 sides? Or you just
I'm going to just literally
times as it will fit?
as many times as it fits, pushing it next to each other like that. See? So that's your second one on. And get my blade, give it a chop like that. Then next one in, and your extruded clay can want to twist on itself, so you have to make sure that you're lining it all up right. If that makes sense. Next one on. Something I was gonna say, if you tune in early and you see computer games being played on the bottom corner of the screen, we haven't lost our mind. We thought, because the music is, you've all heard it a lot and we don't want it to get boring, if Jamie is feeling up to it, he's gonna play a level on a computer game that is allowed to be aired, or you'll put a video of it on. Just something different, so you've got something to watch, because we can't start the moment we start streaming, because the stream only sends out notifications once you start. So everyone who comes along via notifications will miss the beginning of it if we start immediately. If that makes sense. Typical. I need enough for one more to go in there.
I may be able to find some more royalty-free music on
There we
on the
go.
YouTube library instead.
We'll have a look and see what we're going to do. But if you find that some weeks that's a thing, don't be surprised. It is still going to be a claying session. Right, let's quickly do enough for one more stick. There we go. Now normally you shouldn't really go that fast with it, but where it's quite a soft clay, I can. Right, so the last one in here, like that. And if you find you have a gap, I'm quite lucky, it all fit on perfectly for me. But you can just go around and squeeze it all in a little bit and it will come together. You just got to be gentle and not squeeze out your design. If that makes sense. So now I've got this star-shaped pillar. Yeah?
Yeah.
This wraps out the way. So I want to do a base for it. A base and a top platform. So let's put that back together in a ball. Put this over to one side. So I need to roll out a flat sheet that's thick enough for a base and a top platform. And luckily I do have more of this clay, both in that extruder and in my clay box. I do love how Fimo has made it that you can work it and the granite effect doesn't diminish, if that makes sense. So let's put you in the center and cut out a square, I think. That would do, like that. Whoop, move my roller out the way. Sorry I'm in the way, but I need to get over the top of it so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Like that, like that. And about there. About there. The other week I did do the stall at the craft fair at Your Space Sutton, and it was really interesting. We did have that big storm at that point, and it was in the polytunnels. It sounded like a train going through. It was really, I enjoyed it. I know it meant we got less customers and it was loud, but it really was such a impressive show of nature that it's hard to be annoyed with it. So far, just straightening those up a little because they're looking a little wonky. There we are. Right, I'll put it up on its side so you can see. We've got the start of quite an ornate looking pillar. So I want to do a top flat bit. Now, when you're trying to roll flat bits of clay into a ball, you really got to be careful that you don't trap air bubbles. It's not as bad as with ceramic clay where it dramatically explodes, but it ain't great. Now the question is, do I make the top one square or round? Because I've got some nice little glass bits that I can embed into the sides.
Party Life says it was quite something, wasn't it?
It really was. And I've always loved storms. I've had a sister who was kind of scared of them when she was young, but to me they just are so impressive. nature really knows how to show off.
I think to your previous question, I would make the bottom square if the top is also square, in my opinion.
So we want them both square. Now the easiest way to make sure that we've got the same size is literally pick it up, don't push it on, just place it on, and then use that as the cutting guide for the next one. If you notice, I do everything I can to not actually use specific measurements and rulers and stuff like that.
Hearty Life says, I had to try and talk through Storm Dennis at my paint along workshop last Sunday too.
Oh god, that must have added extra shouting. I'm sure it all came out well, because I've never seen anyone turn end your paint along with a horrible painting. I don't know how you do it. Don't matter how little talent they got, you still end up making sure they go home looking like they are painting masters. So we got the top platform. Now I'm just going so that I can see that it's central, and if you're not over the top of it, you're not going to get that right. So soz, I'm in the way. And you can see how having that little bit of a spike stick up means that you get a really good pillar. The other way to make sure it's central is just put it on its side and rotate it like that. So what do you think so far? We're looking like that. Yeah? So what I want to do is along that top edge, I'm going to push some of these in each of the sides and put a little cat's eye bead next to it. So let's see if I can manage this without messing it up. So like that, line it up, push it down firmly. If this comes off after you baked it, you can just use 2-part epoxy and glue them back in. But the good thing about doing it whilst it's raw is even if it comes off, you'll have a nice indent that the bead fits into to make it flush again. Right, when you work with cat's eyes, you've got to make sure you put them in the same way up, because the reflective line all runs, so they all run in the same direction. Does that make sense? So like that for one side, and you can see the reflective line goes top to bottom on them both. Yep, they look like eyes. That's why they're called cat's eyes, and I use them for that. So again, one in the middle. Now I've got 2 of these that are slightly green and 2 of these that are slightly grey. So that one was a green, so I'm going to do a grey one next. Whoop. Green and grey across it all. Here we are.
Would these help?
Tweezers can help if you're not as cack-handed as I am. I have depth perception issues, and I know that's a crazy thing for a clayer, but you'll see that there are quite a few times where I'll miss my placement, or I'll have to guide myself through fill because my eyes don't actually see depth as well as others. Is this still a cat's eye one? It's very, yeah, it's just not got a lot of it in it. It's sideways on, and I always try to push them in deep enough that it covers up the bead hole, because I think it looks better that way. Like that. There we go. squeeze the sides around the bead so that it all sits in nicely like that. 2 more sides to go, so I need a greeny one this time, like that in the centre.
How deep do you push those?
I'm pushing these so that they're flush,
So the top is flush.
so that the top level is flush with the clay. I don't think they're going to hold in. I think they're going to fall off, and I'm just going to need to use a tiny dot of epoxy just to put them back on. But that is an easy thing, especially once you practiced a bit with epoxy. Don't use super glue with polymer clay. It reacts, and what it does is it doesn't do it immediately, so you think your fix has worked, and then a few months later it all falls apart. Can be a couple of weeks, can be a couple of months, but it's a chemical reaction that's happening between the glue and the clay, and it denatures the glue, so the whole thing kind of falls apart, and also leaves this bright white stain across where you glued and slightly outwards as well, because it releases a small amount of vapor that has this stuff in it. It looks like you've just sprayed deodorant on your piece, which is, it's a look, but yeah, not great. So I advise against super glue. If you really got to use super glue, then super glue gel tends to have a better chance of that not happening with. The liquid runny stuff, you got no chance. It's gonna do that. I'm just making sure it's all sitting level, and then I'll show you. So like that. Now to me that looks pretty good. Yeah? So what I'm going to do, let's move all this out the way. Bring back the statue, and let's put all this in place. So I want the plinth there, I think. Like that. And again, make sure you push it down firmly enough so that it's properly attached to the base. And this base clay is raw, and you want that because you want the stickiness of the raw clay. So that's in place, and this I'm going to push into place as well, but if it falls out I'll 2-part epoxy it back on, which is what I'm expecting to do. I'm just putting a little indent. So that's what it's going to look like. Let's get the side camera in so I can show you.
Okay.
So we've got the pillar at a diagonal, sort of at a point. So
hold the camera and you can move the
if we, I'm hoping for the statue to be in that position when it's displayed. And
do you want me to move the model? Because you moved the camera when you moved it.
okay, great, there we go. So that's all in place. Let's come out a bit so you get to see it more. And to me that looks like they're both interested in what she's doing now. That worked out well. So then her hand will be waving over the top. Are you upright properly? There we go. Hand will be waving over the top of her crystal ball, and one hand will be stroking her dragon. So, right, what's the time? How long have I been at this? Only half an hour. So I can work on hands. So, this first one that I've already done is going to be on that wrist. I'm not adding it on because I'm going to use it as a guide for my second hand. Yes, I've got too much wrist there. That's entirely fine. I'm going to cut it back. So let's move the dragon lady out the way. Right, now for a hand, we're not going to use the tissue blade. You need to have a craft knife. I also advise having a selection of different size ball tools, or it's going to be really, really difficult for you to get something that looks like a hand rather than a mitten. So I think that's all the ones I used. Yep. Right, so can you see a couple of ball tools and a knife? So I've got too much clay because I measured out both the balls as the same amount of clay by weight on a weighing scale, and I do suggest little tabletop set of scales. So open it up. They don't go up to what kitchen scales go up to, but they're only about a £5, and you can drop it on, and 1.5, 1.5. So it's easier to make sure you know you've got the same clay. Right, I can already see with that hand I got a lot of extra clay there, so I'm going to separate off some of that clay by just twisting and pulling. So a bit more like that. There we go. Now, first thing to remember, your hands need to mirror each other, so the thumb needs to be on this side rather than that side. So we're going to start off by pinching along the side you want the thumb, a little bit of extra clay, and you want to pinch it right down at the base of the wrist, like that, because the thumb starts right down there. It's really easy to start it up there on the hand, and it looks right for a while, and then you'll look at it over time and go, there's something not right about that hand. I know, I have done it myself. So we are looking very mittenish at the moment. That's fine. We're just going to pull up those fingers to the kind of length that we want and check that we are roughly the same sort of size. If you've got too much clay, just bring some down and out the way like that. So that looks roughly the same sort of middle hand, same sort of thumb clay allocation. At this point, I pinch those fingers just at the base of where they start the hand, so that that bit of clay is just slightly thinner, and you want that nice tapered rounded top in order to get your fingers in the right position. So like that. Now from there, we now got to try and get some of the dent in the middle. You get a raised bit there with your thumb, it looks kind of like a drumstick. Then you've got a raised bit just below your fingers, and a big sort of circle there that's very slightly raised but not much. So you've almost got a diamondish type shape on a actually upside down beaker or a colander. See? So across there, diagonal down, little flat bit, diagonal up. Yeah? That's what you're trying to aim for. I start out, first of all, I don't like to try and get this dent by resting it on the countertop, because you'll flatten out all the back of the hand. If you put it in your hand, that'll cushion it a bit more. So I start out by putting in that middle dent like that. Then I come in with a smaller tool and start to bring it across So I got that top dent in, and then you want to smooth it out, because when it is lots of dots, it looks like a very wrinkled hand. Then you're going to come down like this. So can you see that sort of triangle-y Y shape? Now that side goes up to the outside edge like that, and you want to put that curve to make that drumstick around your thumb. See? Like that. And you'll find you want it slightly deeper than the end result, because once you're done manipulating the fingers, that will be smudged out a bit. If that makes sense. So let's do the fingers, and then we'll put the thumb into place. This time we're going to put it down on the side, and we're going to cut in 4 fingers. Now look at the shape. You want the little finger on the shorter side, so you're going to start down about here. Next one up, it's going to be a bit longer, and yes, you're going to have very square fingertips or triangle-y fingertips at the moment. And then the last one in there, we'll come in and straighten that up, the tips of the fingers. But if you can see, I just divided them out now. So we're now at that stage, and can you see we've already taken some of that dip out just by doing these fingers, and I've got a nice curve to where I stopped. See, you want a little curve. That one might actually need to go down slightly more in order to achieve that. There we are, like that. Now we're going to work on getting these tips so they actually look like fingertips rather than pointy or squared oddness. And I'm going to take out any scruffy excess clay like that. So spread the fingers and tap on the corners, either with a blade, or you can cut bits off if they're very square, like that. Now the other thing, if you haven't got one of the fingers long enough, or it's too long, at this stage you can spread the fingers out wide, and you've got to be really gentle, but you just pull and twist very gently. And can you see I just brought that one up a bit? You can, if you don't want to use a tool, you can use your fingers to straighten out the clay like that, but you'll find it easier spreading the fingers so that they don't stick to each other whilst you're trying to smooth it all out, and be very gentle with it all. Now one last, the little finger needs to not be that pointy, because she will have very claw-like hands. So there we are, that's looking good to me, like that. Then we can bring the fingers back up and lay in how we want. I still think that one looks a bit square to me. Let's just use the edge to roll it. There we go. So like that. Starting to look more like a hand, yeah? So now I want to get that line in there a bit deeper. So what I'm going to do is use the edge of my ball tool and just roll it in like that. Now, which hand are we doing? That one's already done, so we're doing the one that's petting the dragon. Let's double check that the hands are, so whoops, that one's like that. So I knew I was going to do it. I've done the markings on the wrong side. So if you do that, you can still change it. Curve your fingers back over, smooth out that V, which should be on the underside, and put it back in at this point. See, it's not a big massive, you've ruined it if you do that. And I do that a lot myself. So like that, put your V back in and the top line. There we go. So drumstick around the thumb, line across the outside. There you go. How quick was that to rectify? Now, what I like to do is use the side of my ball tool like that, and then I can move the thumb into place how I want, like that. See? Then you can check your size of your hand against the other one, and if it looks slightly bigger, just bring some of the clay down from the wrist like this. See? Just having a fiddle until they look like they are the same, because having very odd hands from each other looks really strange. There we go, like that. Bring that over. They look pretty similar, I would say. I think I got a little too much on the thumb there. So what I'm doing is I'm just bringing the clay and bringing it back down like that. Yep, that thumb's a bit too stubby. There we go. Back under a bit. Now, once you're happy and you think they look pretty similar to each other, putting more of a line in there. Sorry, I'm just bringing the markings out a bit more in that palm. There we are, like that. That's better. Now, you can also put in fingernails, and this you've got to be really careful. Find your smallest ball tool, and you're going to put it on the tip of the finger. Just pull it up past the tip like that. I'll show you once I've done it. There we go. Right. Oops, under the camera lens. Can you see that? Little fingernails in there. Yeah. So it's quite an effective little added bit. So we've got two hands. We can put them in place now. So this is where it gets fiddly. So let's do the hardest one first. The one attached to the dragon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that extra clay off on a diagonal like that. So I've got, whoop, a little bit of clay for a wrist. I'm going to put that still a bit long, so it's better to have too much than not enough. Here we go. Right, I'm going to add that in there. So, what it looks like is that the hand is literally just propped into place, and then there's a jump down to her actual wrist. So what you then need to do is come in with a ball tool, and I love the sides of these because they make very tiny little rolling pins. And I'm going to have to spin this around, make sure I don't smudge out the hand that I spent all that time working on. Get my blades out of the way, face it so that the hand is towards you and you can get in there, and now just start to join that wrist in with the already baked one, like this. Right. It's going to take a bit of fiddling because it's at an awkward angle. But I could not manage without ball tools, I tell you. I don't know how people get on with some of the kit that they've lacking. I'm going to come in with a little smoothing rubber tipped tool and just get out some of these lines. So join it in. And the other thing about this, where I used a bracelet, it makes it easier to hide the join line, because you can almost tuck it under the bracelet. I've just got to come round, and I will, once I've got it smoothed in, I will show you, don't worry. But I'm just literally going round all the join line and smoothing it in and making sure that it looks like one hand rather than, whoop. And she's got it, the rubber tools can cause cracks if you go too firm with them, so I rather do the majority of the smoothing in with a metal ball tool and then get rid of some of those join lines after, then try to do it all with a rubber tipped. I know there are people that love doing the whole thing with their rubber tipped tool, but that ain't my bag. If it's not smooth, it makes the woman look like she's got old lady hands, which is fine if it's an old lady, but when you're trying to do a younger woman like we are, it looks odd. Right, now we can try and put in a few knuckles. So let me show you where I'm at so far. So, can you see?
Try and hold it as steady as possible.
I have joined that wrist in to the bracelet and brought the hand up over the head, like that. I think I still need to do a bit of smoothing out, because can you see that wrist is still looking a bit bumpy? I will get in there and do a bit more on that. The other thing you can do, if you want to put some knuckles on the hand,
don't point the camera
sorry,
off
I will bring that back for a second. I'm going to try and put some knuckles on the hand.
Are you able to move it more central?
How about that? Is that better?
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Just going to pick up some clay. Probably the easiest thing to do will be just to add some knuckles. So you can pinch the clay up, but I'm worried I'm going to smudge stuff by doing that. So what I've done is I've taken a really small bead of clay. I'm going to put that where I want her knuckles to be. So there. Then I can smooth it in with my ball tool and put then divide it into the little bumps, if that makes sense. So just coming round and smoothing in that bit of extra clay there, because it will look weird if it's got join lines like that. There we are. Now I can then come in and allocate them out as individual knuckles. I'll show you it once I have finished. Right, all the fiddly details that go into humans, I tell you, it's not easy. Need a little bit more there, but let me show you what I've got so far. Now, there we go. Can you see I'm just starting to add little bumps to the top. Now, I know there's some weird liney bits on it, but I find all else fails, you can come in with some rubbing alcohol at the end and it just gets rid of all your marks. So I want an extra tiny little bump of clay there, so that looks like a proper knuckle. I'll show you how to do an alcohol wash and what it does once I put this last knuckle in. Right, yeah. Okay, we've got knuckles now. Tapping down a bit. Right. Rubbing alcohol or isopropyl alcohol. If you're going for rubbing alcohol, you want it 70% or higher. Now what it does is it melts a very, very thin top layer off the clay, and that can get rid of all your fingerprints and weird lines and all that sort of stuff. Make it all look a little bit more natural. There we go. That looks better. But do come in with the other side and remove the extra alcohol off of your clay so it doesn't continue doing more than you actually want it to do, if that makes sense. That's that hand in. Now I would say that looks pretty good. I'll probably end up fiddling with it over a few days, but let's show you the end result of that hand.
That's looking pretty good.
Yeah. So I'll probably come in and make those knuckles slightly less pronounced. But I think
any more distinct, because they look a bit stuck together at the moment.
I could come in with the tip of a blade. Whoops, like this.
I don't one-handed. Huh?
Sorry. Here you go, hand it back.
Sorry, it's not safe.
You can come in with the blade and just draw in those finger lines a bit better if they're looking a bit stuck together. So there you go. That'll do for that hand. This hand is going to be a lot easier. So, where do I need to cut it? About there. Because this one I can literally just make sure that you've got it central.
That's really good.
Thank you. Little wiggle and you're just pushing it on like that onto that spike, and then you can come round and just join that wrist in. I find it easier to do it with my fingers if I got the angles to do that. It's harder to do in there because I got the bracelet in the way, but
I think you might need to define the fingers on that one as well. Maybe
yeah,
like
once it's attached I can go in and do defining work. I'm just going to smooth that
I'm
arm.
so amazed at how you can just with your fingers smooth it in and make it look like it's one bit of clay.
Yep, and it does look slightly lighter than the rest of the clay. It darkens up slightly, this colour. Sometimes your
When it
colours
bakes.
do change once it bakes. Right, let's get in under there. I don't want her to look like she's got scars all up her arms. Yep, the underside needs more smoothing in. Sometimes I get out of my chair and I sit on the floor so that the desk is on eye level, so I can really get underneath and check that it's how I want. Right, that's in. Let's come over and divide those fingers out a little more, like this. There we go. Where her hand is out flat, she doesn't need the knuckles that she needed with the bent over hand, so that saves on that job. Let's come in with my little roller, just smooth under there. There we go. That's all joint on fine. She has hands and a body and everything. So let's get the camera and show you around. I reckon she's done. Bit of finagling on that bent over hand. But we got the hand out. The fingers are all looking good there. Yeah, I'm going to need to work on that knuckle. They're still not right. But I find...
Pointed the camera around.
Sorry. There you go. You can see they're still not entirely right. But I find that sometimes I need an extra day. Come back to it with fresh eyes. So, to me though, you see how really it doesn't look like that hand is at not the wire, that the wire is actually going into the dragon's head. It looks like we've done with that hand, sorry, looks like we've done with that hand what we did with that hand and just push it straight onto the wire.
Yeah.
So it does work out and it does give you a far more structurally stable person, especially alongside of those little bits of wire at the bottom of the feet. So what do you reckon? I reckon when she is going to...
I am the same with painting.
Thank you. Yeah, I know, so a fresh pair of eyes is important. I reckon that if I was the person who has this as their forever piece, that would be the angle I'd count as forward.
But it's up to them,
Yeah, but it's up to them. But I'm really pleased with this. I'm going to come off this camera. The last thing that I will do, which is something I do whenever I remember to, and I have this time, is put my maker's mark on it somewhere right out of the way. So what I'm going to do is that little back bit here, I put a triangle.
You really can't see it very well, huh? If you
I
could
will
just move it right a bit so that it's more central.
like this, triangle, and I'm gonna need to move it so I can see. Oh no, I'll show you in a second. I put a C in each corner for Carly's Creative Clay. That's what I've decided is going to be my maker's mark, and a year. So we are 2020 now.
Yep.
So then in the future they can at least have some idea that it was me that made it and when I made it.
That's really cool.
20. 20. Not that I'm liable to become a very famous artist, but famous artists didn't think they would either. So it's better to mark up my pieces. And I will say that I only remember to do this on roughly half of my pieces. So let me see if I can show you what I just did. So you've got, whoop, the light's not going to work. Right, let's torch. I got a torch over here somewhere. My desk is so full. There it is. Right. Torch. Can you see years in there and my maker's mark? So 2020 and Carly's Creative Play triangle. Now, if you're going to put it on the top, put it somewhere right out of the way. You can try and carve it into the underside, but you're liable to cause damage turning it upside down, so I try not to. So all I'm probably going to do off camera is have a little bit of a fiddle around with those knuckles again and bake it and then varnish it. I'm probably going to go for the Art Deco gloss varnish. The Ronsil does a very, very bright shine, and I think it might be a bit too much of a bright shine for me. Although I may Ronsil the black base, I don't know. But hopefully by next week I will be able to show you her baked up, finished off. My next project, I'm really seriously thinking about doing a Bigfoot. You know, Sasquatch, other names for it, Yowie, Yeti, Abominable Snowman, Steamar, same thing. There was the most famous bit of alleged film footage is the Patterson Gimli films. So what I'm going to do over the week is get some screenshots from that and see whether I can manage to make that into a model. I want to go a bit cryptic monster sci-fi, I think, for a while. I think you're going to end up with things like Mothman and grey aliens and Wendigos and Skinwalkers and all the X-Files stuff. Because I think I got women done. I need to have a go at doing some guys. I think that is in our future as well. But I want to stay kind of humanoid, but see how weird I can go. I think the hardest one that I'm really considering, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna do, is a lizard man, because you've got all the complications of I know, thank you. You got all the complications of a humanoid and reptile skin. It's gonna be a real trouble. So it may be in the future, but I think the next one I'm gonna try for is Sasquatch, because then I can start having a bit of research and tell you about some Bigfoot lore. This is not me saying I believe in Bigfoot. This is also not me saying I think we found every primate out there on this planet at the moment. I'm not, jury's out about Bigfoot though, although there's some really persuasive arguments. It's hard. Anyway, off of that, I hope you all have a really great week, and I will get her finished off, and I'll be able to show you all soon. Alright, bye everyone, have a good week. Bye.